This is the XrmToolCast from CRM Audio with Business Applications MVPs Daryl Lattimer and Jonas Rapp. The podcast focused on tools available for the Microsoft Business Application Platform. This episode is brought to you by Mapltyics by Inogic. Mapltyics by Inogic is a market-leading certified for Microsoft Dynamics 365 geoanalytical mapping app. Mapltyics empowers users with powerful map visualizations and routing capabilities within Dynamics CRM to drive better sales, improve business processes, and engage the right customers at the right time. Mapltyics now works with Dynamics 365 version 9 and Dynamics 365 app for mobile and tablet. We thank Mapltyics by Inogic for sponsoring an XrmToolCast from CRM Audio.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the XrmToolCast. And your host, Daryl Lattimer, with my co-host, Jonas Rapp. Hey Jonas,
Hello.
how you doing?
Hi, it's great, thank you.
Awesome. Today we have a special guest with us, the creator of the RESTBuilder within CRM, Jason Lattimer. Jason, you want to go give yourself an introduction?
I don't know if I'm so special, but I'm Jason Lattimer. Yeah, I make that RESTBuilder tool and some other things. Business applications, I think that's what they're calling it now, MVP for, 1 to 6 years or something, so that's cool. That's me. I make developer stuff.
All right. And so today we spent some time focusing on the RESTBuilder. So do you want to give a quick explanation of what it is and why it is and how it is and all that kind of fun stuff?
Well, if you haven't used it yet, it's a managed solution right now that you install into your CRM org. And what it does is it allows you to tap into the old 2011 endpoint, REST endpoint still, and the new Web API endpoint. It gives you a graphical interface for designing, queries or any kind of operations that will be possible. And it'll spit out the corresponding JavaScript code for it that you can execute right there in the browser. And that's helpful for, if you're going to use the Web API for any other tasks, you can basically more or less get the exact syntax you'll need for, to port it into some other language. So it's helpful in that regard, and it's helpful at getting at data that maybe isn't exposed normally through advanced find or something like that, because it'll just read all the queryable metadata that's in your particular org and let you have at it. It's not perfect, but gets by.
I think that's it sounds like a great tool, but what are the when would you use that? I mean, what's the use case? Why would you want to have this JavaScript or whatever code that it generates?
Well, I know it's no fetch XML builder, I know, but but the usefulness of it, of course, is again, if you're doing some sort of scripting that you can't, if you've got something you want to do in the browser on a form that, you can't achieve with a business rule, or you need the immediacy that a workflow or a plugin won't necessarily provide you, that's when you can fall back to something like JavaScript, of course. And, as you get a little bit more complex with it, you want to interact with, other entities not necessarily on the form at that given time. So using something like the Web API endpoint, it allows you to do that interaction, but you do have to have a little bit more than basic knowledge of JavaScript to achieve some of that. So what this tool is doing is basically making that gap a little bit smaller by spitting out the code for you. You just point and click what fields you want to query or what type of record you want to create or something like that, and you spits the code out, you copy and paste it, and there you go, advanced JavaScript functionality.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, I have to admit that's something that the Fetch XML builder does not do. It tries to produce some old OData 2.0 queries or URLs, but that's it. So whenever I need...
I was going to say, you need to cover it. You need to have it spit out PowerShell too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm way behind. And by the way, there's your tool. So why should I?
I kind of feel like it's the yin to your yang, Jonas, where it does all the Web API stuff extremely well, and then you cover the Fetch XML stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I was just using it. I was just using it the other day, and like I said, I needed to get some PowerShell code out of it. Is what I actually really needed. I mean, I got the fetch query I needed, but I was like, man, if I could this would have just output in PowerShell, that would have been perfect.
Well,
that right in there.
As both your tools and my tools, they're open source and just waiting for pull requests to be submitted.
Indeed, they are.
Yeah. sounds like one of the requests that I've had open on the. Well, I guess I don't even know if I actually made it a formal request, but I think I made a request, and I think he said the same thing that you just said, Jonas, where I asked Jason if he could include some sort of templating for the way that the JavaScript call site's called. Because by default, you generate the call site either with jQuery or with the XML HTTP request object being called. And there's no reason, or ideally, in a project, you would have your own little helper library that kind of wraps all that logic up so you don't have to copy and paste that every single time. You just pass in your filter and your select statement, whatever you happen to do, and it would go through and do that query. And I was put a request in verbally at least a while ago of, hey, wouldn't it be nice if you had that? And Jason's like, yeah, you should do that. So I guess I should still do that.
That's the lazy and the sort of collaborative way of the open source community.
I have that on my mind for when I rebuild the thing, to work with XRM Toolbox. It'll hopefully have that. It wasn't really designed for that. It was written pretty crappy to begin with, so
So did you just reveal something that you have the intention of rewriting the RESTBuilder for XRM Toolbox?
I did, didn't I? I started it 9 months ago, and then I stopped working on it about 9 months ago. But no, it'll mean the idea. Knock on wood, I haven't gotten super far on it, but I should, meaning to pick it back up again one of these days. But it'll effectively be like how Ribbon Workbench works inside of XRM Toolbox, where it also have a managed solution if you can get hold of it to install on your system directly. So instead of using WinForms, gasp, it'll just be a browser control, and then it'll have some .NET code behind it to kind of interface through the service client. But that's kind of what we're thinking.
Okay. So
the idea there is to also replace the editor with the Monaco editor, like in my code editor extension or solution. So it's basically you've got Visual Studio Code loaded up as your editor, with full-on IntelliSense and all that goodness.
Yeah, that tool's a pretty neat tool as well. That one's built. That one's in the XRM Toolbox, correct?
No.
That one is that a download?
Someone else has I think got an editor of some sort.
Okay. So this is one where it takes this Visual Studio Code, like the code editor itself, and puts it in the web browser, right?
Yeah. So it gives you a better, well, at least in my opinion, a better way of sorting and filtering and searching your web resources. A nice grid with search and sort and all that good stuff. And then the back end part of that is when you want to edit something, that's when it opens the Visual Studio Code editor and can hack away at it and save and publish, and yeah.
And that's all in your solution in CRM then?
Yes.
Yeah. It's all web based. Yeah. Yep, that's one of the questions I ask in an interview is how they actually edit their web resources, and if they're copying and pasting their web resources directly into the little generic text box, and they've been doing CRM for more than 2 years, I kind of have an issue with that they haven't had that pain direct them to do something better or find something better.
It's worse, I suppose, if they're just typing it directly in there and not at least copying it from something else.
Yeah, if they're typing it directly in there, the interview may be over at that point in time, unless they're brand new to CRM. But yeah. So we've heard that the RESTBuilder is maybe coming to an XRM Toolbox plugin near us at some point in time, and talked a little about your code editor. What other tools you got going on? What other things you want to talk about?
I've got a number of workflow extensions I've built, 5 or 6 different libraries that are out on GitHub for manipulating strings and numbers and dates and all that fun stuff. I think one of the more popular ones is for deleting attachments off of emails and notes and stuff like that automatically. But there's a bunch of things that you can't normally do, string manipulations and stuff like that. Not necessarily something you're going to use every single day. it's kind of for those people that get into the scenario like, oh, if only I could, truncate the last, 3 letters of this string or something, they're inputting or whatever, and I've got just a simple string function that'll do that. So most of it's stuff like that. It's nothing, none of the code for it's overly complex, really. It's just simple things the workflow engine doesn't really do.
I was actually recently at a Dynamics 365 Saturday in Scotland, and I went to a session with Ryan McLean, and that's when I realized your name popped up when I was showing these workflow extensions. So that was news to me, but realized that there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, those are nice because those don't have issues. Nobody raises issues with those hardly, so those are easy to maintain because there really is nothing to maintain once they're written because they're so simple.
Yeah.
There's really not too much to go wrong.
And those tools are tools that are for developers and non-developers alike, the workflow extensions. So maybe even more so for non-developers because developers could theoretically write it themselves if they wanted to, but why reinvent the wheel? So have you been writing tools since day one of being an MVP, or how long have you been doing open source tools, Jason?
Actually, yeah. That was kind of one of the first things I did, I think. Well, it was. I started before I was an actual MVP. I helped another MVP at the time write a tool, which is now defunct. But it was meant to take like an Access database. It would read the schema out of that, and then convert it into CRM entities and attributes, and dump all the fields on a form. So it's kind of my first go at creating a tool, and kind of working with all the underlying CRM metadata and stuff like that most people don't deal with on a daily basis.
Okay. And do you have, is it, what's your reasoning for why you create the tools? Is it so you could use it yourself? Is it because it's fun? Is it because you're getting paid ginormous amounts of money? What's the reason for creating these tools?
That last one, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The RESTBuilder, actually started out as, the reason I built it was, at the time I was answering a lot of questions on forums, and there's lots of questions, and there probably still is, how do I, well, maybe not as many now, but there was always lots of questions how would I, do this query, or how to, create this record, or whatever, so it was I'm pretty good with that, so I'd try to answer those questions, and it's always repeating the same thing, this, because it's not, they don't just want the, they want the whole bit of code, show me the code, so to speak, and they want the whole bit that works. So, I kind of got sick of typing, relatively, a lot of times almost the same thing over and over again. So I kind of just made that tool to spit the code right out, and so I could just paste it in there to answer questions faster.
So you got annoyed with answering questions and having to go look it up. So because of the questions, not because you're actually using it in a project, but because of the questions is why you wrote the tool. That's interesting.
Annoyed's a little strong, maybe, but I was working smarter, not harder, is the way I choose to look at it. But yeah, it was kind of really stemmed from just, I wasn't immediately using it in a project. It was, to make answering forum questions easier.
So I guess I heard somewhere that you have dedicated slots where people are allowed to make time slot reservations with you. So I guess that's one part of this, starting out to create these tools instead of having to answer questions. That's really smart, I think.
In the end, it was probably a lot of effort for answering foreign questions in the end, but it turned out okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess, and that's the reason behind most of these tools that, as you mentioned, I don't want to do things repeated too many times. I want something could automate that for me, and as well for me. With the fetch XML stuff, I don't speak fetch XML fluently, so let's have a tool do it for me instead.
Mm-hmm. At that point, why? Now that you've got a tool that can spit it out, how often are you really going to have to memorize, all the exact syntax? It's like the CRM exams that ask you, how much RAM do you need to install the Outlook client? Nobody needs to memorize that. If you need to know that, you just go look it up.
Yeah, exactly. So this was all quite techy to move to the more softer parts. Do you think it's fun creating these tools, or is it just to get rid of people asking questions? And I mean, what are the best parts of being part of this community, do you think?
I mean, it's definitely. I mean, from my perspective, my personal perspective. I mean, it is. I mean, I do enjoy doing it. I mean, it would really. I'd really be some sort of masochist if I was doing this all on my own time and I didn't like it. But I mean, but it's also, I mean, again, the more, at least the way I see it as a developer, the more hands-on work you do with code, I mean, that just makes you that much better overall. Whether or not you want to admit that or not, but the more hands-on, the more you do, and especially as time goes on, in my day job, I don't necessarily do as much hands-on project work as I did, maybe a few years ago. So working on these tools is good because it, keeps me sharp still. And like I said, I do enjoy building them so other people can at least get value out of it, and they can spend less time doing, writing some JavaScript code, and they can dedicate some more time to other endeavors. Hopefully, do something, spend some time on something else and make that better. So
yeah, I can totally relate to that. Working on the open source tools in the evenings just to see code, because I rarely do that otherwise in the day-to-day work. So I totally understand that. And while talking code and writing code, I know you have created a library, or I don't know, what is it, a library for the app insights implementation in Dynamics?
Something I made.
Sorry?
Did I forget something I made? I can't even.
The application insights logging from Dynamics to Azure.
I did do that, didn't I? I forgot about that.
Yeah, you did that.
I should realize that. I just did a presentation on it like 2 days ago. Yeah, that was kind of an interesting little project. Application insights was always seemed like a cool thing, having like a centralized logging platform. But all along, I think that people were under the impression that you had to use a DLL, somewhere along the line if you wanted to use what Microsoft gave you to get that logging off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you reverse engineer it a little bit, it's just HTTP requests, and you can write. I mean, even if you're not using my specific implementation, you can look in the browser and see them online and hit F12 and look at the traffic, and you can see all the application insights logging that's going on, on the Microsoft side.
So this is kind of a guerrilla style logging.
Yeah, I mean I basically wrapped the Microsoft implementation they supply you for JavaScript, and just made it a little bit more friendly, I think, and just add in some of the default information to make it useful as far as CRM goes, because it was never it's really logging in Dynamics was never really its intent. So it's more geared toward like a web application in general, so it doesn't the way CRM loads up pages, it just says client wrapper.aspx was the page you're on. Well, that means nothing. So I'm grabbing things like who's the user logged in, what form were you on, what's the record ID, that all gets logged by default as well. So at least you can go back to the logs and have some sort of context of what's going on. And so you said guerrilla style logging. Yeah, having 2 instances of application insights actually didn't play well together at first, but I managed to work around it. So.
Okay, so what is it? Is it like a C# library you can get from GitHub and add to your project, or is it something just plug and play, or how would I go about to use it? So
there's NuGet packages there's a JavaScript version and there's a C# version. Like I said, both on NuGet. The JavaScript version will, again, install the NuGet package. It'll drop a couple JavaScript files in your project. And it's got any corresponding TypeScript that goes with it. It's written with TypeScript, and you get all the source files for it. So if you want to make modifications to it, you can. But you can use it just as is. If you want to load it up on a form, you include the one file, the one library that goes with, and you just give it a configuration in the page on load event. It'll turn, so you have the ability to turn on and off different types of logging and log within certain thresholds and things like that. .NET side just installs again a folder with the source files, so we're not worrying about IL merging anything. And in similar implementation, you just give it a config with the options to, your instrumentation ID and your, what options you want to turn on and off. And then you just, then usually it's one line to instantiate it, and most other things are just one line of code to log.
Awesome. Sounds great. So we know quite a few very cool things have come from you. May we ask if there's anything in the pipe? What do you see happening in the future from you, from Jason Lattimer?
No, it's the Jason Lattimer. The Jason Lattimer.
Sorry,
the
from
Jason,
the Jason Lattimer. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir.
Yep.
So we're not going to talk about the other guy that spells his name with one T. That's a semi-famous magician.
All right.
He's pretty famous. I think he's got his T.
Yeah, I noticed that when I searched for you a couple times. It's like, I'm getting some magician guy. Oh, yeah, okay, it's spelled wrong. Okay, there we go. So I got that figured out.
But you're he's not the Dynamics magician then.
That's right.
That's you. All right. So, is there anything coming?
Well, I think one of these days I'll have to actually build this version of it, the RESTBuilder for the Xrm Toolbox. I guess probably burnt out a little bit lately. I don't know, just too much going on and not enough, time to commit to things I got to think that hard about, I guess, which is, I've got my Visual Studio extension, which I know a lot of people like, but, obviously most people have probably noticed I haven't updated it in like 7 months, and more than likely I'm probably just going to discontinue it. I don't. The unfortunate part is it's just like having so many things is it's hard to maintain. There's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's sorry to hear that, but because it was an awesome initiative, but totally understand it. Absolutely.
Just didn't get the, I don't want to say. I was hoping to get a little more participation, I guess. And I. Not that I expect anything from anybody. Everybody's got their own thing going on, and I get that. But it's just, like I said, too many things, too much going on, and then to have it sit there and, not be updated. And, it kind of hit me the other day when someone rated it like a 2 on the Visual Studio Marketplace, or a 1 because it was broken. That just it's not that
it just gets like a burden for you.
Right. And it's not like it wasn't unwarranted or anything, because it was. But it just, that kind of, just keeps me up at night, basically.
So you think of just removing it entirely, or
probably
if there's anyone interested in continuing the development?
Yeah, if
anybody was interested in continuing the development, then I would just say, well, let's work on it, and then we'll just keep it going. But
so if there's a listener or audience right now that's like, I would love to take that over. And you can get like a one-on-one conversation with Jason to say, yes, you take it over and you do it and have fun with it. Is that what we're hearing?
That's pretty much what I'm saying. I mean, I like to think that at least this version of it, I had another version, earlier, a couple of years ago that I had, and it was pretty much a mess too, but I had no idea what was going on in the Visual Studio extensions and how to build them, especially with that kind of complexity. And there's a lot of, Visual Studio extensions are cool, but they don't, it doesn't probably get all the dollars and everything at the Microsoft side, because it's not, it's not selling as many licenses or whatever. So there's some kind of archaic parts of it still, that are kind of hard to deal with in some places. But it's getting better, and I think, when I rebuilt it, for the current versions of Visual Studio, I like to think I did at least a decent job of organizing, and it's not the best, but so, and then for anybody that would want to get into it, it's there's a little bit of a learning curve to develop a Visual Studio extension, but I think most of it I've tried to most of the interactions with Visual Studio I've separated out, so they can just be reused if you want to add a file to a project or whatever. So it's not as difficult as it seems, because all the framework is all there already. Now it's, unless we're implementing a brand new feature or window or something like that, most of it's just dealing with the existing files. And, helps to know a little WPF, I will say, because all the extensions are built on WPF for the front end, which is, an interesting story to experience as well. I'm not really good at WPF development, and I found that it's very painful to try to make it look exactly the way you want it to look.
Yeah, just today,
Or I just suck
just
at
today, I actually used your NuGet package lookup tool code out of that and used it when it's something I was using on a new XRM Toolbox plugin that I'm working on. So yeah, that was well architectured. It was just easy just to pull and rip out. So
that was the intent. That was kind of the idea, was to at least make it not such a mess where if someone came in, they could at least kind of spend some time and try to poke around and not be too lost.
So, Daryl, did you just drop a little miniature bomb there? You're working on a new tool.
Yeah, it may be a really dumb idea or maybe a really good idea. I'm not sure yet, but we'll let you know when or if it becomes reality. So far, it's getting along pretty close. I will say that I did implement some sort of like wizard functionality within my plugin, so you could like ask a question, go to the next one, ask a question, go to the next one, sort of thing. So just kind of as a sneak peek. And I just finished up working on a complete overhaul of the early bound generator. So now it's the whole UI is completely changed. Now it's just a giant properties grid rather than all those weird buttons and checkboxes and stuff. So I've been a busy bee. So
yes.
Well, Jason, anything else you want to mention, or anything else you want to say before we call it a day here?
No, I think that's about it. If you're interested in keeping that Visual Studio extension alive, hit me up on Twitter, or throw your name up on GitHub or whatever, raise an issue and let me know. Otherwise, I'm probably gonna pull it one of these days, and hopefully, Microsoft will, hopefully they'll, they said in the latest version of the release notes they're gonna do some investments in developer tooling, and hopefully that'll mean, updating their Visual Studio extension to work on 2017 and the forthcoming Visual Studio 2019, which will probably be out like any week now. I don't know if that's true, but pretty soon. So
did you say just in next week it's coming out?
I don't know. I'm just saying they seem like they're pretty far along on it. They've got like beta 2 out or something already now.
Yeah, I've been using the previews for I think a month or two now.
So, yeah, it can't be, realistically, it can't be more than 2 months out, I would think, but...
Is there anything in the...
So that's
pretty soon, though.
Yeah, then we just have to wait for the Dynamics team. We've heard that they have restaffed the developer tooling team for Dynamics for quite some long time now, and we're still expecting and waiting for them to deliver something. That'll be interesting.
Yes, we are. We are still waiting, and yeah, I would.
So they can reach out to you at the GitHub. You're the J Lattimer, and is that your Twitter handle as well, at J Lattimer? All right.
It is.
So you got the simple thing. Someone else had D Labar, so I had to change my Twitter to DD Labar because some Derek, somebody in New York,
should have reported him.
What is he thinking? Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. We appreciate all you've done in the community. And here's a side note: as I was with Jason at the Boston D365 Saturday event, while we were having lunch, he had 3 people come up to him and say, I think first it was, "I'm sorry." So they apologized first before they even talked to him, and they said, "I'm sorry." It's like, "Are you Jason Lattimer?" So it's kind of like you've kind of reached a god level status with people that they have to apologize first before they're even okay to talk to you. So.
Oh no, I'm just a man.
Just a man.
No.
All right.
It's fun.
Well, thank you for listening to our show today. If you have any questions or any future requests for either maybe a tool you'd like to see talked about or someone to interview, please let us know. You can reach out to us at cast@xrmtoolbox.com. Did I get it right this time?
That was entirely right. And also the Twitter handle at XrmToolCast.
And that's all we got for today. Thanks for joining us.
This has been the XRM Toolcast from CRM Audio with Jonas Rapp and Daryl Labar. Do you have questions for Jonas and Daryl or suggestions for future episodes? Send it to cast@xrmtoolbox.com. This is a production of Dynamics Podcast, LLC.